Good morning, everybody. I can see the people are coming in. Let's give everybody another minute or so to connect. It's a sunny morning here in France. I hope you can say the same wherever you are. Probably in the UK, but or other places. I think we can more or less start, and then if other people join us in the process, that's just fine. So welcome again, everybody. This session or workshop, as we like to call it, has been organized by three companies. We have Unsworth, we have BBL, and we have RMB Boulanger here present. This is a workshop regarding the regime 42, and so the purpose is really to run through the theory, as we call it, quite quickly, so that we can then go to the questions and the more conversational thing. I can see Mark shared that it's grey and dull in the UK as usual, so we will try to make it sunny for you, Mark, by telling you wonderful things about VAT and how you can conduct your business again to the EU. I'll give my word to Alan now, but before I do, just keep in mind that this session is recorded. And maybe a second thing, if you have already questions in advance, you can drop them in the Q&A box. Do not drop them in the chat box, please, but in the Q&A box. So Alan, the stage is yours.
Morning all. As Arthur rightly said, we are going to go through regime 42 today, and we're going to go through all of the elements of it quite quickly, because we do want to open most of this session up to your questions and to your specific issues. So we could go on to the next slide. I'm reading my mind there. Thank you very much. As we know, post-Brexit, there were a massive complexity of the customs processes, and that made bottlenecks for getting your products out to the EU. With the new veterinary and sanitary inspections, certifications, there was huge pressure on the supply chain and delivery times, but not enough attention was paid to the fiscal side of things. And that is, as it says on here, an issue that needs to be managed carefully. Next slide, please, Anne. So the reality since Brexit happened and since we came out of the EU is that the B2B transactions are no longer EU harmonized. So you now got an export and import scenario. Import customs duties have to be paid to the EU unless the product qualifies as a UK origin, but all products that are imported into the EU trigger import VAT. Even if your products are zero rated for sales, it doesn't matter. It's import VAT and sales VAT different. Now, most clients in the EU, in our 40 years experience in dealing with this, most clients in the EU want their goods delivered for the price they paid. A DDP solution, delivery duty paid solution. So they pay one price, they don't have to deal with the customs authorities, they don't have to deal with any extra VAT administration, and they get the goods on the doorstep for the price they paid. That is the solution that we talk about with these VAT regimes, and that is the solution that we are talking to our UK clients about all the time. Next slide. So the options for you for getting your goods into the EU and for being compliant with the VAT is, what we suggest is that you would use France as your single point of entry into the EU, and you would take care of the import VAT at your entry point, which typically would be Calais, using the short straits, using the Dover to Calais route or the train. So you can, with the smart border now, you can clear your goods as the goods cross the water. So you can, as they land in Calais, they can be cleared already. Now, you can do this on your own French VAT number. That is it's a cracking solution, but that takes a while. It takes a while, and it takes 2 to 3 months to get that in place. If you wanted to do this week, you could use regime 42. It's actually regime 4200, but I think the zeros are pointless. So regime 42 is where you share our global VAT number. Now, we are an accredited company in France, accredited to one of the highest levels with the French authorities. And we have a separate VAT number that we can, in effect, rent to you. So your transactions go on our VAT return in the following quarter. This means that there is no import VAT for you to pay, no cash changes hands. Even if you wanted to, even if you got on your knees and begged, you couldn't pay the import VAT at point of entry. You couldn't pay your customs broker, as you could last year. You couldn't pay the authorities because it's just not allowed anymore. France has implemented the reverse charge mechanism as mandatory now, so that all import VAT must go on a VAT return, whether that be yours or whether that be ours, instead of any cash changing hands. So no import VAT to pay, really important, but it does have to be declared. Now, it can be declared on our VAT number under regime 42. There is a limitation though. The limitation, the main one being that those goods cannot be sold in France. These are for goods that are going to come into France, clear customs, take care of the import VAT, and then be shipped to any of the other 26 EU member states where your clients are based. So no domestic sales in France using this regime. So if your scenario is your customers are in Germany, Austria, Italy, Spain, this is fantastic. It's a great solution for you. If your customers are in France, we need to talk about a slightly different solution, regime 40 being that. Next slide, please. So this is your case. This is where your company sells to EU businesses, not except French, using France as the sole point of entry into the EU. So regime 42 can be used instantly. As I say, we could get you exporting your goods this week if we were to use regime 42. No VAT to pay up front at the time of import into France. You don't need to register for VAT yourself in France. And your goods are shipped from the UK to all EU countries on a DDP basis. And therefore your clients aren't involved with the customs process or VAT. So there's no extra burden of administration or costs for them. You take it on. Now, the administrative burden is actually not that much. All we'd require from you is the kind of documents that you would keep yourself as standard business practice anyway. The process of going through this would be, you needed a customs broker in France to deal with your import declarations in France, and the goods, you are then the importer of record, so the goods are cleared in your name, and the goods are immediately transported to your EU customers. There's no, typically, as BBL will talk about later, there's typically no need for the truck to stop. As it enters Calais, 85 to 90% of the time, there's no need for it to stop. Variations if the goods are of animal origin, but typically goods are cleared as they cross the water and can just go straight on to your EU customers wherever they are. On a practical point of view, and I'll hand over to Arthur in a second, but on a practical point of view, your company needs to mention that it's our global VAT number that you're using on your documentation, and that we will be representing you for your VAT concerns in France to the French tax authorities for VAT and interest tax purposes. I will, at this point, because again, coming into the practical side of things, and I told you it was a whistle-stop tour, I told you it was going to be quick, but I'll hand over to Arthur, who just, and there's a visual representation of what we're talking about, but Arthur will tell you a bit more about the practical aspects of your documentation and what you have to do to get this working for you. Over to you, Arthur.
Thanks, Alan. And indeed, the practical part of it is quite simple when you know what to do actually, and that's why we are here for, together with our partners BBL and Unsworth. So as you can see, the purpose of all this is to make sure that we have an import into France followed by the intra-community delivery to your customers throughout the European Union. The whole point of it is that they basically receive their goods as if they would be buying from France. For them, it's again the same thing as before Brexit, receiving the goods as an intra-community delivery, and that's about it. So the only obligation they have is filing basically an intra-EU acquisition from their point of view. And that's just the same thing if their supplier would have been a supplier from another EU country. So you get then back to the situation that you were used to before Brexit. So a couple of things, and most important thing is obviously the import document. With that, everything stands or falls. We need to make sure that you, as a British exporter, is also the importer into France, that the correct regime is used, and BBL with Emily and her team will make sure that this is all correct, and that in box 44 the VAT number of your client, of the final destination, as well as our VAT number is mentioned, and that's when you see basically the intra-community delivery from France to, for example, your German or Austrian or Belgian client. I'm pretty sure that most of you guys, I hope, know more or less already what I'm talking about, and I'm keen to go to the questions. But before we do that, just a small word from Unsworth and BBL. Ian, I'll give you the word now for your own part, just to give an introduction. Go ahead, Ian.
Thank you very much, Arthur and Alan, for the breakdown on Regime 42 and the VAT implications. So yeah, Unsworth play a small but very important part in this chain of events. Obviously, in order to export your products out to the EU, you need an export broker. And that's the role that we play in this kind of trio here. Small bit about Unsworth. We have been in business nearly 50 years, 47 years, in fact. So, you know, we're not a new kid on the block. We do know what we're doing. We've worked extensively with both BBL and RMB Boulanger over the past couple of years to refine a Brexit solution that just essentially works and is a well-oiled machine. Yep, next slide, please. Yeah, as I said a bit earlier, the role is quite small, but it is important. We would receive your export documentation, just check it through before we do the export declaration, make sure everything's on there correctly. If you're exporting using Regime 42, we just make sure that the correct wording is on there so that it can all be tied in correctly on the French side of things. We do the export declaration for you, make sure you get a copy of that. And we'd engage with both BBL and potentially your haulier to make sure everything is running smoothly. And finally, there's an element of transport management here as well. If you are struggling to find hauliers that will export your goods, or if your current haulier isn't meeting your standards, we can certainly help with finding hauliers from our pool of partners there and just help you manage the haulage and transport element. So like I said, quite a small role, but important, just making sure that the export part of things goes correctly and that the interface with the import side of things is correctly managed as well. So there you go, short and sweet.
Important as is indeed, Ian, because if the export is not done properly, then BBL obviously will be blocked from the French side. Yeah. And so yes, of course, a very important role. Emily, maybe you can share a few words on BBL.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Emily, the sales representative at BBL Customs. We are a French customs agent, mainly dedicated to Brexit. We know how important it is for British shippers to keep their EU clients and make their life easier, considering the customs border put in place. And this is why we have invested in hiring customs experts to make this process very smooth. Since the beginning of Brexit, 10 experienced customs brokers joined us, and we set up a veterinary and phytosanitary process for CVEP inspection and shed establishment as well. So today I will introduce you very quickly to the smart border and clearance process for Regime 42. The clearance request process is very simple, as you only need to send the commercial invoice and packing list at the same time to BBL and Unsworth, which will get back to you with export and import clearance and the barcode. The barcode is the picture on the right. It will be the document scanned by the driver on the British side before the boarding on the ferry or the shuttle. The DAU is the most important document. It's in the middle. It's the import clearance you have to archive. It's the proof of importation of the goods on the EU territory. So I highlighted the important elements on the DAU. So it's raised under regime 42. You will be, as said earlier, the exporter and the importer on the document, as you will be selling on a GDP basis. You will also see RM Boulanger Global VAT number, and you will also find there the VAT number of the final EU consignee. Next slide, please. So once arrived at the British border, the driver must scan BBL's barcode, and the pairing will be achieved by the smart border system. The trailer registration will be recorded by cameras and paired with the documents automatically. During the crossing, as you can see, there will be screens indicating orange if the trailer needs to stop once arrived on the French terminal, or green if he can go straight on. Next slide, please. So once the crossing is achieved, there are two options. Driver has the green line, which means the driver can go and deliver directly. The clearance status on the top right of the DAU will automatically switch to BAE, which means that goods are cleared and into free circulation into the EU. If orange line is indicated, the driver will have to stop at the customs parking. In case of orange line, there are no barriers or any equivalent physically put in place by the authorities at the terminal, so the driver has an important responsibility in the customs process. If orange line is not followed and terminal is left, it is considered by French authorities as a serious offense, and there will be obviously a customs fine. BBL will directly deal with the authorities in order to release the truck, and once you have green light from us, he will be good to go. But as Alan said earlier, 90% of the time, the truck will have the green line and no stop will be needed. And that's pretty much all you need to know on the import part.
Wonderful, wonderful, Emily. Thanks a lot for this brief but clear explanation about the process. Now, I think we can all go to the questions, because this is why we are here for today. I have already a couple of ones written in the Q&A box, but I do invite people also to unmute themselves and to ask their questions live. Alan, I'll give you the moderating role.
Thanks very much.
So go ahead. Who is?
Yes, absolutely. And please do unmute yourself, or if Anne can do it on a blanket unmute, do speak up and get your questions in. I'll start off with the first one, which came from Sean Byrne, who said that I assume by using regime 42 and claiming it EU point of entry that there's no requirement for a T1 transit guarantee. You're absolutely right, Sean. This completely negates the use of T1s for crossing EU countries with the goods having not cleared customs. So using regime 42 means that the goods are cleared at Calais. So you've dealt with your import VAT, you've dealt with the customs, and they are then in free circulation to go to any other member state with no further VAT checks, no further customs checks.
Yeah, and I think that's important to say that one of our motivations basically to come up with this solution was basically to avoid T1s, because T1s generate also their own difficulties in terms of, keeping basically in mind local laws of 27 EU member states, because T1 means you transit to the country where you finally ship to, and then you clear only in that country. So for many British exporters, it meant that they need to keep in mind 27 different interpretations of 27 different customs authorities in 27 different countries, which is obviously not so very efficient, let's say it that way. And the biggest how do you say that, positive thing about our solution is that you only go through one country. So once your process has been streamlined, it's always the same thing. It's basically copy pasting and making sure that all your documents are in order. There you go. There is a second question, Alan, that basically fits into this one, I think, in the chat box from Mark Shand, who said, so we have a GB exporter should have a French VAT registration, shipment clears whilst in transit across short straits on arrival in Calais. goods with preferential origin incur nil duty, and postponed VAT accounting is in place. And then the question is postponed VAT accounted for against the French VAT number or the end consignee? Well, a very important thing to say here is that it's a DDP solution that we offer. So the purpose of it all is that everything is reported on your French VAT number, or if you don't have one, as we are using the regime 42 for companies that do not have a French VAT number, then against ours. In any case, it is never the end consignee that is the importer of records into France, because that obviously would create problems for them, because if it's a German company and they would import into France, you would basically create an obligation for them to be VAT registered in France, and probably they won't be grateful if you would create a situation like that. So yes, it's always against, well, the purpose here is really to clear everything against the VAT number or our, as you are renting ours, instead of the end consumer. That's really the purpose of DDP, basically. That's what DDP means.
Yeah, thanks, Arthur. I think for Mark's question there, Mark, you're saying that the GB exporter should have a French VAT registration number. Yes, that is absolutely an option. That would be regime 40, having your own French VAT number. As I say, it's a great solution. It's fantastic. And if you've got customers in France, that's absolutely what you have to do in order to deliver DDP to them. This scenario is about regime 42, whereby postponed VAT accounting does apply, but it's not yours. It's not yours as the customers. It's RM Boulanger's VAT number that we're doing this accounting on. And the same with the Intrastat process as well, and the Intrastat reporting. That's RM Boulanger's responsibility, not yours. So it's not on your name that the VAT, we are your limited tax representative. So for VAT purposes, it's our responsibility on regime 42.
And to add on to that, Alan, if I may, so we will be filing then the Intrastat return as the outgoing flow, so the flow going out from France to, for example, Germany, and your German end customer, for example, would then file an Intrastat return if they pass their own threshold as the acquiring flow. So the flow coming from France to their own company, and so they would use our VAT number as the VAT number to point to where the goods are coming from. So that is how remember I said that for them nothing changes. It is as if they are buying from a French supplier. When you look on the obligations, it's the same thing for them as they would buy from a French supplier or a Belgian one. They only need to report the Intrastat and the acquisition in their own VAT and Intrastat return, but basically they must do that all the time. So it doesn't generate any additional obligations for them. Hope this is clear.
We have another question in the Q&A from Alexandra. So, if you are a British business but have an EU VAT number and are delivering goods from Poland to Germany, but you do not have a German VAT number, nor the client does, is that an issue? As we would 0% VAT the order. As the supplier has a Polish VAT number and we have one, say, in France or the Netherlands, but the goods are going to Germany, would we have to deliver to wherever our EU VAT number is and then deliver throughout Europe? Right. So, Alexandra, if my understanding of this is right, if you have a French VAT number, but you're buying goods in Poland to deliver to a customer in Germany, is that correct? I think that's my understanding of that. Then by using triangulation in that scenario, you could use your VAT, your French VAT number, or your Dutch one, if it looks like you've got a Dutch one as well. But you could use your French VAT number to purchase the goods in Germany and transport those to a customer, purchase the goods in Poland, sorry, and then transport those goods to a customer in Germany and declare it on your French VAT number. That isn't regime 42. That would be having your own French VAT number and doing your own French VAT returns. Arthur, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, if I understood the question well, but I understand it the same way as you do, it is indeed then a possibility to use triangulation with the condition that there is one single transport directly from the Polish supplier, for example, to the German customer, and obviously the German customer must have also a valid German VAT number. It can't be a private individual, for example, or a company that doesn't have a valid VAT number for intra-community movement of goods. So if those conditions are fulfilled, then a triangulation could be an option, so that you would avoid being obligated to register for either Polish VAT or German VAT. But to be honest, this subject merits a workshop on its own, and we do have one on the agenda in June. So I really would invite Alexandra to come back to the next one for the triangulations. But yes, that would be an option. It would of course change if the goods are to be imported first, but I believe that is not the case here.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Alexandra is our finance director, and
Right.
I'm our sales director, Chris, and she just sent me this for me to join because she couldn't be in it. So how you've understood that is exactly correct. However, the client, say that when it goes to Germany, they do not have a VAT number. So how do we get around that issue?
Not because you need then a German VAT number. What will really happen, and this is how we treat all of our well, how do you say that? Well, questions or problems to solve for our clients, is that we look on where at what point the change of property happens between the different parties. So here we have an initial supplier, we have a middleman basically, and we have the final buyer in Germany. Now, the final buyer doesn't have a valid VAT number in Germany. It would mean that you basically either, well, you become owner of the goods in Germany and you then do a local German sale, basically. What would mean that you would be obligated to have a German VAT number. So the acquisition from your Polish supplier would be an intracommunitary acquisition because they have a valid VAT number. You have then a valid VAT number in Germany. So that's a classic intracommunity supply delivery from Poland to Germany, followed by a local sale with German VAT to your German customer that doesn't have a German VAT number. That would be then a potential solution to the thing. And it all, well, it's all very hard because of the fact that your German client doesn't have a valid German VAT number. That is the variable that changes everything.
So in that situation, Arthur, does Chris then need to get a German VAT number himself in order to make that work, as well as his French and his Dutch one? Yeah. So
yeah, because the French or the Dutch or whatever other VAT number cannot be used in that case, because you don't have consistency between your flow of goods and your flow of invoicing. You can't invoice from a French VAT number to a German, let's say, private individual in that case, while goods are coming from Poland to Germany. You know, another solution would be then to ship goods first from Poland to France or to the Netherlands, and then only deliver it from France to Germany. But again, if this is a private individual or not, a couple of other variables to discuss then.
Yeah, it's all businesses, and our issue is, so we provide branded merchandise, and our clients are pretty much every country in the world. So when you talk, if we just, you know, stay with Europe, they often have events in different countries. So us having a VAT number in every single EU country is just not an option. So therefore, it sounds like what we'd have to do is deliver. So we've got a Dutch VAT number. So it sounds like we would need to deliver into the Netherlands first, clear the goods there. Well, it's not even clear the goods, but pay the VAT there. Then could we deliver from the Netherlands to anywhere else in Europe?
Well, now it changes everything again, because you say that they are B2B. It's about B2B business. This is tricky because if that would be a private individual, that could be different. But because of the fact that they are B2B, whether they are registered for VAT or not, it doesn't cancel the fact that somebody needs to be registered for VAT. Now, you are obviously not willing to be registered in 27 countries of the EU for operations once in a while or not. You don't know it. It depends of the events, and they just have one event and then it's see you next year or maybe never. So it's a very particular situation. There are a couple of other solutions I can think of for that, but I need to see then more documents and more understanding about the flows and the physical flows of the goods. So I would invite you to maybe to book a private call with us.
Okay.
I'll be happy to attend, or Alan, but we need a little bit more documentation to solve this questions then, to be
Yes.
honest.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, brilliant. All right, thanks for that, Chris. Yeah, dealing with exhibitions and the like does get complicated, but we do it regularly, so having a fuller chat with you would be beneficial. We also have a question from Martin Griffiths. Can Regime 42 work for products that are part of a groupage load? Martin, yes, absolutely they can. But each shipment on Regime 42 has to have its own import declaration. So that's an import declaration is per consignee. So on your groupage load, if you have, let's say, 5 pallets to 5 different customers in 5 different European countries that clear in France, that's 5 shipments, 5 import declarations, because there are 5 separate VAT numbers on the consignees. So yes, Regime 42 can absolutely work in that situation, but you'll be paying for 5 shipments. It won't be clearing in one go. The whole truck won't be clearing under the same import declaration.
Ian, do you agree with that?
Yes, yeah, it's a good synopsis.
And Emily, from your perspective, does it then mean that you can, for example, do an import declaration for this one load of our own client in that groupage load, not necessarily having to do all the other import documents as well for all the other clients that are present in the truck, right?
Yes, exactly. That's completely that.
So basically, in that case, the haulier, for example, has 5 or 7 different companies on his truck. We do the clearance for your part in that case, and the haulier must make sure and be sure that for all others present on the truck, they also have, you know, valid documents and well, having being compliant with the import rules as well. Obviously, if that's not the case, then somebody else shipment who is not compliant could then, you know, stop the whole truck. But I think if you work with partners such as Unsworth, such as BBL, who have extensive experience both in well, customs formalities, as also Ian said, transport, BBL as well. So I think that wouldn't be a problem normally.
I think the potential only issue there really would be that the truck is delivering into a warehouse that is outside of France, because as we mentioned earlier, the Regime 42 doesn't really work for shipments into France. If the warehouse is actually in France, Emily can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's okay to do that as long as the goods are forwarded from the French warehouse to the consignee outside of France. I think it's within 48 hours or something like that, because you just need to basically move it as quickly as you can so that it's not deemed as having arrived in France. But yeah, otherwise everything should be okay with that.
Yeah, that's it. And also in case of groupage loads and multiple barcodes, the driver can create a logistics envelope, which will regroup all the barcodes, and he will only have to scan one barcode, and not every barcode we catch can take a long time if there are several ones.
Perfect. Thank you both for that. Yeah, my understanding as well is that those goods, if they do go to a warehouse to be split back up, need to be forwarded on in a timely manner. I don't think there's an actual limit. Is there, Emily? Is there actual? It has to be 48 hours, or it has to be 72 hours. I just think it has to be done as quickly as possible, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
So on Regime 42, if the groupage load is going to a warehouse to be then split up to be forwarded on, the time limit for that, where it's allowed to be in the warehouse and then moved on, is there a specific time limit, or do the rules just say it has to be done in as quickly as possible?
It has to be done as quickly as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you very much for that.
I think it's a matter of just being realistic, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to change trucks. Sometimes your truck has broken down. I don't know. Everything can happen
Yeah.
in life. So we just need to be realistic. Nobody will chase you and spank you if it's 36 hours rather than 24 or 48. That will not happen. But you know, keep it realistic and keep it fair. That's the whole point of it. Also, especially that the French tax authorities, they are quite vigilant on regime 42 in the sense that you don't pay any VAT on import. At the same time, you're not registered. You're using our global VAT number. So all the French tax authorities want and ask is that the game is played fair and that you don't take disadvantage of this quite a facilitative rule, basically. So keep it fair. And as long as you do that, there are people as well, they have understanding in case of, you know, force majeure or whatever, and your goods finally leave the country 24 hours later, nobody will catch you for that. Alan, a question that we receive quite often is in the sense of regime 42, is that how is this then creating maybe any obligations for the British exporter? I think it's important here to say that you are using our global VAT number. So basically, we are taking all the responsibilities here from you. You remain a British company, even though you act as the importer into France. You remain a British company. This doesn't create any other obligations for you guys. The only thing you need to have is an EORI number to be identified at the customs as the importer. But I think it's important to understand that because of the fact that we are taking all the liabilities and responsibilities on this part, and from a customs perspective, that is then Unsworth and BBL who is sharing the responsibility, and we from a fiscal perspective, I think it's just important to know that we need to make sure that the documents are in order. We need to make sure that your sales invoice has this couple of legal statements that you need to mention. We need to make sure that the customs invoice is clear, saying that you are the importer of records. These are the basic stuff. We run through that with every client, with every new setup, just to make sure that it's all in order, that it's clear for you and your team. And the only thing we ask is just that you make sure that you respect these rules, as long as you use our global VAT number in this solution.
You're absolutely right, Arthur, and it's in our best interest to make sure that the client's paperwork is pristine, because as you rightly say, it's our liability. You know, if their paperwork is perfect, then there's no issues further down the line. The other question that seems to come up a lot is this a loophole? You know, is this a loophole that's going to be closed anytime in the future? Regime 42 has been around for a very long time. We at RMB Insider, and we're 40 years in the business, we've been dealing with Regime 42 for companies outside of the EU for a long time. It's just that Britain's new to being outside of the EU, so it's new to the British companies. It's not the loophole, it's a specific tax regime that is available in all of the EU countries. It's not a French tax regime, it's an EU tax regime. So it's not a loophole, it's not something that's going to be closed, it's not something that's on the edge of being illegal or anything like that. There's no fine lines here, there's no blurred lines. It is a standard operating procedure within the tax laws within Europe, and as such can be used by non-French companies, non-EU companies to get your goods into Europe quickly and effectively.
Yeah,
now
it could even be used by a French company, Alan, but it doesn't make any sense because they have their postponed VAT accounting anyway. But theoretically, you could use it for a French company as well.
Yeah.
But it doesn't just make any sense, or it doesn't have any added value for it for a French company, for example. Then, so
here's an interesting question then. So from Jaya, we have Dutch VAT number. Can we apply regime 42 from the Netherlands? Yes, absolutely you can. But what you need to do is you need to speak to a company that's accredited with the Dutch authorities and has a global VAT number that they can rent to you. Now, RMB Insider, we don't have we don't have a presence in the Netherlands. We don't have an office in the Netherlands, so we don't have a Dutch global VAT number that we can rent to you in that situation. So you'd have to find a partner in country that is accredited that can use that.
But Alan, are you sure that Jaya wants to import to the Netherlands? Jaya, maybe you can unmute yourself, because I read it as if you have a Dutch VAT number, but you would like to go through France. That's how I read your question, but maybe I'm mistaken. Can you elaborate on that, maybe?
Thanks for the answers, Alan. Yes, we kind of register in the Netherlands, and we would like to import from Netherlands because we got a warehouse partnered with them, so we need to send our stock to the Netherlands straight away.
That would mean two things. So either you go through France, you use regime 42 and you deliver to your Dutch VAT number. That would mean that you don't pay any VAT in France, and you have a transfer of own goods basically from France to your own VAT number in the Netherlands. So that is a possibility as well. If that would mean that the French route is less expensive, for example, from a logistic perspective than the direct import to the Netherlands. We do have clients, and not one, but many of them, who basically use regime 42 not to deliver to their clients, but to deliver to their own warehouse in Poland, in the Netherlands, in Belgium. Why? Just from a logistical perspective, very often it's cheaper and it's faster to go through the smart border than to clear directly into the Netherlands, even though you have a Dutch VAT number in this case, because obviously you have a warehouse and you perform sales from the Netherlands. So you could use regime 42 to transfer your own goods from France to the Netherlands. So we would then again act as your limited tax representative in France, and you would have a transfer of own goods, which is a similar thing as a normal EC delivery from France to the Netherlands. That could be an option. If you import directly into the Netherlands and you have a warehouse, then obviously I don't think it would be much sense to use regime 42 in the Netherlands. You probably then would use postponed VAT accounting in the Netherlands, but for that you will probably have to have a fiscal representative in the Netherlands to use this Article 23, what they call, which is basically the equivalent of postponed VAT accounting. So yes, France is definitely an option in this case, if it would be cheaper, faster, more efficient to deliver to your Dutch warehouse to the French ports, to Dover, Calais, or than to go to Rotterdam, for example, directly. I hope this helps.
In this case, do we need to kind of like register French VAT?
No, you would use our global VAT number. That's the whole thing. So as long as you don't sell directly into France after clearing into France, you can use our global VAT number and transfer your own goods from France to the Netherlands without having the obligation to be registered in France. But if you would decide in the future to also have a warehouse in France, for example, then obviously yes. But if you're only talking about clearing in Calais, for example, using the route Dover-Calais, clearing your goods in Calais and then directly shipping it to the Netherlands, to your warehouse, wherever that may be, then you can use our global VAT number for that with regime 42. And you would basically, from a VAT filing perspective, we would be then filing Intrastat and VAT to your Dutch VAT number, and you would do the same from your Dutch VAT number, pointing to us as from where the goods came from France. That would be, in a nutshell, the procedure to follow. But again, we do have a lot of clients that use this route because it seems to be more efficient very often than to clear directly into the Netherlands or Poland or Germany or whatsoever.
Thanks.
Does that help, Jaya?
Yeah, thanks. That's really helpful. Yeah.
Okay.
Great. So you want to talk more about that, and for anyone else on the call who wants to talk more about that, in more detail about your specific situations, then please do get in touch with any of us that you see on your screen here, and we'll be more than happy to have a lengthy sit down with you and go through your specifics and recommend the best solution for you. Are there any other questions from the 26 people that we have left on the call? Is there anything else that you want to know about regime 42 or how it differs to regime 40? What the implications are?
If nobody has a question, I have another one that I'm asked for very often, and that's the last one for me, and then I shut up. Very often people ask me, yeah, but could the European client also use the same regime 42 to get their goods to Spain, for example? Why should we then be the importer of records? And the answer is quite simple. Yes, of course they can. But if you have 10 different clients in 10 different countries, then you would basically say to each and one of them, work with RMB, and then you can make sure that you don't have to be VAT registered in France. We can clear the goods in France on your name and use regime 42 to transfer goods to your own country, just as I explained to Gia in the case of the Netherlands, for example. So that's obviously possible, but of course, the biggest advantage of using regime 42 for the British exporter as being the importer of records into France is that you can manage everything for your clients. So basically, it would be, of course, much more efficient if one company has a contract with us and then delivers to all the 10 different clients within the EU, than all of those 10 having a separate contract with us. So it's just a matter of efficiency, obviously, and etc. But yes, it is also possible, just as in the example of Gia.
Brilliant. Thank you, Arthur. Okay, so it doesn't seem that there are any further questions. So in a nutshell, regime 42 means that as a UK company, you do not have to register for VAT in France. You can rent RMB Boulanger's global VAT number. Now, it's global in the sense that anyone can use it, but it is a French VAT number. So the goods have to come into France and clear in France. Once they are cleared, they then have to move in a timely manner to another EU member state. They cannot be sold in France, but they can be sold anywhere else. And they are in free circulation to be sold anywhere else with no further VAT applied and no further customs checks once they are cleared. Okay, that is in essence regime 42. That transaction then goes on our VAT return for the following quarter. And to give you some idea, our last quarter's VAT return was something in upwards of 30 million euros. We have lots of clients dealing using regime 42 with us. So your transaction then goes on our VAT return, and the import VAT is then taken care of because it's been declared. No import VAT to pay, no cash flow issues, no cash to change hands. It is dealt with.
And if you add the smart border to that, Alan, then it almost it would become a dream, I would say, right?
Well, transit times are just reduced massively with the smart border. So your transit times, you know, dealing with a great broker on both sides of the channel, Unsworth and BBL, means that goods go through the smart border really quickly. As Emily said, there's a 90% success rate going into the green lane, because the trucks don't stop. So your transit times are reduced. Your import VAT is taken care of. Your customs duties are taken care of by your broker in France, and your goods are delivered to your clients as quickly as possible and seamlessly as possible. It really is. It really, I mean, sometimes I get told it sounds too good to be true, but that really is it. That's how it works, and works every day, all day.
Alan, let's be honest. Even if it goes to the orange lane, we are talking about a couple of hours.
Yeah.
We are not talking about a truck being blocked for 2 weeks because of some odd paper was signed or not signed. We are talking about a couple of hours. The customs are doing their inspection. BBL is on the spot to give them feedback if necessary.
Mm-hmm.
They do have offices in Calais. So even if you go to the orange lane, very often because of food products, animal origin products, even still, we are not talking about huge delays. We are talking about a couple of hours, and the truck then goes on its way.
Yeah, and that, you know, that's one of the benefits of using 3 really well-established companies, because the relationships that all 3 of us have with the authorities, with the customs officials, you know, on the border, financial authorities, is so good, because we've been doing it so long and so well, that trucks tend to go through without too much delays, and any small issues are dealt with really, really quickly.
It's all about trust, isn't it? And we are pleased and we are honored to have such trustworthy partners as Unsworth and BBL. I think with that, everything is said, Alan.
Agreed.
I would like to close this workshop now. I would like to thank everybody, both the speakers and also the people that connected. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much for your time and your contributions. Have a lovely day, and we'll try to send the sun towards you here from France and
Appreciate
share it
that.
with you. Have a lovely
Thanks
day.